Yes! I can't wait to watch the Bulls game on my new TV.
Oh, no. Our new TV.
Our new one. Okay, Bull Boys. Here we go. Bulls.
Right? They've consistently been at the top of the East thus far. And then we have COVID trying to fight its way in and try and diminish the production that this Bulls team is doing. So I guess this is a check-in on how you feel as a Bulls fan on this thus far roller coaster ride.
So yeah, it's the state of the team to this point. What is it? December 12th, 2021. Right now, we're third in the East, 17-10. But like you said, it's kind of been ravaged by, obviously the team's been ravaged by COVID lately. We have currently, as of today, as of a couple hours ago, 9 guys currently in health and safety protocol, which is unprecedented, obviously. But, I think the league should definitely look into possibly postponing these games because it is sort of putting a slight damper on the season so far, just because in terms of getting the rhythm back moving forward and then going, trying to be a competitive team and challenge in the East, this is going to be something that will be talked about for the rest of the season. But not only that, personally, for each guy that actually did test positive, they have to work their way back, and then the team has to work itself back in terms of getting into that correct rhythm, let alone separate injuries and other things that could disrupt that flow again. So it's just this outbreak, so to speak, like it definitely, puts a huge damper on the team and on the outlook, at least the short-term outlook. Long-term, I think we should be fine. Hopefully everybody's good and, there's no lingering effects or anything like that. But from a team standpoint, yeah, it does kind of, there's really not much to talk about in terms of, these are games that are coming up, but we're going to be so short-handed. It's just tough to get these victories against any team, really. But
yeah, and I feel like that alters the expectations of the team as a fan, but also maybe as just a player and a personnel staff for the Bulls, because really you're just in like trying to get through it mode right now, right? There's always questions of can we even field enough guys properly? They've been calling up different G Leaguers and people who are on the training camp roster just to actively fill the team. So you have that one segment, but then also a point you just reminded me of just now is I think despite, this outbreak that's occurring right now, and let's just for the sake of conversation say that this is the core of the Bulls dealing with COVID for the rest of the season. So barring, any actual injuries to different players, they in theory should be all right later in the year. But at the same time, it's like, I think when you look back at this season, outside of this current season, we're going to have to refer this to that season that was affected by COVID, right? Like, and the what ifs in terms of like team chemistry and progression and all of that, if they didn't have that outbreak, early in the season, which kind of affects how it may play out later in the season. So I think there's just a lot of dynamics at play, whether this shapes up to be, the last time the Bulls really have to deal with this or not. This is still going to be connected to this season when you talk about it in the future, history of telling the story.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially considering like how hot we are to start the season. Before the outbreak, obviously DeMar DeRozan was named Eastern Conference Player of the Week and just playing spectacular, obviously at MVP level. And the team was starting to hit a stride. This is even without Vooch, who missed time before with COVID. So it's obviously bad timing. Like, you obviously don't want it to happen. And I think the league should take a long look at postponing these games because they didn't hesitate to do it last year.
Right.
And I don't know, obviously the health and safety protocol changed a lot this year, obviously with the teams being 100% vaccinated like the Bulls are. But, obviously that doesn't prevent you from catching and then spreading if you have mild to no symptoms. So it's just, I don't know why the games would be played at least this next coming week. But
yeah,
if they are, it's like, we're at a disadvantage even. Like I said, it doesn't matter who we play. It really doesn't matter. You have 9 guys going out there, obviously without Zach and DeMar and a host of other guys. So,
and it's also that's just from an NBA standpoint, that's a diminished product, right? You got people who are
Right.
paying money to see these like stilted teams getting rolled out there. And it's like, so even just as a product, it's suffering. If you're just thinking about, the presentation and the money aspect, it's like, are people even enjoying these games from, whether you're watching it at home or in the stadium? Like there's
Right.
that aspect to think about too.
Yeah, and then from a health and safety standpoint, I mean, it
For the
can't be good
actual
to
player's health, yeah.
right. Yeah, not only that, but you're interacting with people, and you're still going about obviously not recklessly, but you're playing an NBA game in different cities, traveling and playing different teams. All it takes for one of those players in that team or a staff member to, be in health and safety protocol, and then there's a potential outbreak on that next team. So it's just,
Yeah.
I don't see the point, especially like obviously with the holidays coming up, like limiting travel for the Bulls over this next week would be the most important thing, especially until a few guys are able to get back. Not really from a competitive standpoint for us, but I think also mainly for, like I said, just limiting the potential exposure for other players, and then even throughout our team, really, it might even be it's NBA basketball, so it's probably not possible, but for them to postpone and then them even to be away from the facilities for a few days or whatever, like if that's possible, that might be the best idea. But
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out on the court. It's just once again we're talking about Vooch. It's kind of fun. Well, not funny, but it's ironic because, like I mentioned, was just coming back from COVID. Basically, when DeMar was one of the first or one of the few key guys that was down at the time with Kobe White, Javante Green, and that's what like the rest of the outbreak really occurred. But
Yep.
Vooch is going to have to be that guy that keeps us afloat now in these games if we have any chance at winning. And still, we are fielding still guys like rotation players, guys who have a chance to prove themselves now. But for us to come away with the win or two if these games are played, Vooch has to be that guy who leads the charge and has some vintage games.
So,
Hopefully, they can feature him and kind of play like how he was in Orlando the last few years.
well, that's the first thing I thought of. So, with that being said, doesn't that sound like more of a coaching adjustment to kind of change the style of how we're playing right now? And if so, have you seen any difference with that lately, or not quite? And maybe it needs to be, a little more intentional with the state of the team right now.
Yeah, I think it's been a combination of both. I remember the last couple of weeks they've been featuring Vooch a lot in the beginning. How we were saying previous episodes, like how they should feature him at the outset of quarters, trying to establish him, get him a couple easy buckets. He's just still not converting at that rate. Where like he's getting shots in the flow of games, but he still hasn't really, in my eyes, even adjusted to playing with Zach LaVine alone, for instance, let alone playing with a healthy roster of LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and then everyone else who's able to contribute offensively. But I think for Vooch, he was so high volume in Orlando. Going to this third role was tough for him. Even the secondary role, he hadn't really had the time to do that with LaVine. They only had like 20-something games last year to do that. So he goes from one, like a super alpha, like one who gets like a bunch of shots a game over like 20 plus, to a guy who's still getting, I think probably around like, without looking at the stats, he's probably shooting around like 13, 14 times a game, but the shots aren't really in a flow or in a rhythm because he's not really, they weren't establishing him at first, but he wasn't converting. So it's just a combination of both where like they weren't establishing him, but now they're looking to feature him more, but he's just still not converting at the rate he needs to.
So, but with that being said, at this point, as it stands right now, as we're recording this, he would have to be the primary feature in terms of how he was used in Orlando. It's like he's number one at this point, right? Zach is out, Caruso's back. Kobe may come back later this week. It sounds like that's trending upwards, and Javante Green as well. So from an offensive, production standpoint, okay, maybe some shots go to Kobe, but this still looks like prime candidate for him to return to that Orlando type of feel, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, he has to though, and I
Yeah.
think the good, not the good thing about the silver lining, or what could be potential silver lining, is Vooch just getting some confidence back in terms of I was this player and I am this player. You can't be that must move from an all-star campaign in which you were dropping, I think, 22 and 11 with 3 assists every night, basically, to putting up what he's doing now, with just being inconsistent really as a scorer. At the end of the day, the rebounding is still going to be kind of consistent, obviously, but as a scorer, he has to take charge and just kind of has to, you know, get into more of a rhythm with shots that can get him into, you know, an easy flow at the outset of games with
Right.
converting like those easy hooks. But they just have to run a bunch of post ups and pick and pops for him like they've kind of been doing. But obviously with Zach and DeMar out, it's going to be at a much higher rate. So hopefully just that higher volume will get him back to that flow he was in Orlando.
Yeah.
But
well,
yeah, he has to be the guy. I'm looking for him to. You got to average 25 plus during whatever stretch this is without
at least 20. Yeah.
You have to.
And so one of my main concerns, though, with everything we just said, is like, for all intents and purposes, the struggles Vooch has had this year seem to just be mental, in the sense of him just trying to mentally wrap his head around this role that he's in, which is, you know, pretty unique and different than what he's been in before. But when you combine it with the situation that's happening now with this COVID outbreak, he knows already, right? He's already been beating himself up publicly about wanting to play better, and he's not playing up to his potential. But my fear is if you throw on this, okay, now we know we said we needed you before, but we really, really need you now. Like, is that going to affect the psyche as well? I don't know if you caught the Warriors game last night, but Steph, you know, at this point, I think is 7 threes away from breaking that record. But He talked about the fact that because of how bad he wants to break that record, and so he's thinking about it a lot more. And so he struggled last night, and I think the game before that,
right?
You know, where it's like he can knock down 10 threes in any game if he wanted to. But you can see he's like there's a mental aspect of it that's affecting the shot selection and shot making that he's doing now. So my only fear is Vooch was already struggling before all of this. Now you add on that added pressure of no, but we actually need you to produce like right now. So hopefully that factor doesn't make it even worse, right, for his confidence if he doesn't have a good game.
Yeah, look, that's an amazing point, honestly, because it's a good comparison to Steph Curry trying to break the record. With the Vooch, I think the thing that obviously this shouldn't be stressed in any situation with an NBA team, but since we are so shorthanded, I think the message should be he should be producing even if we don't get wins. There shouldn't be pressure to get wins. Maybe outside that first Pistons game because they're still a young 4-win team.
Yeah.
But outside that first game, there shouldn't be any pressure to get wins during this stretch with all these guys out. It should just be playing basketball and producing. Like,
right.
Literally trying to have fun, because I think that's been a big thing with him not being able to. This is the best team he's ever played on. You know what I mean? Like, even though he's been two-time All-Star, he hasn't played in a situation where, you know, he has a chance to compete for the playoffs and be serious about it. You know, he's not sneaking in as a 7 or 8 seed potentially. So I think there's been adjustment for that, and then also being in this third role. But I think there's no pressure, like right now in this current stage. There's pressure, like you said, for him to play better, but there should be no pressure for him to get these victories while these guys are out. So with that said, hopefully that can alleviate some, you know, of his thinking that, you know, he has to really produce and press, because you don't want to force the issue at the end of the day.
Right.
Because we can't afford games down the stretch with him going 3 for 14 or just having these terrible, terrible shooting nights. And a lot of that is mental, but at the same time, he can't get into that flow of like, okay, well, you know, I don't know where my shots are coming. I'm just going to shoot, because he'll never get into a rhythm throughout the entire season that way.
Right. No, and I think the aspect you just brought up is probably one of the main ingredients to turn this thing back around, is just having fun. Like, you can see he doesn't really look like he's having fun. It looks like he's trying to figure something out there.
And he also looks relieved when he makes a big play. It's
right.
Like, he set the game. I remember the game against Utah earlier in the season when he was struggling and the team was playing so well. And he finally had it wasn't a great game statistically, but he made a few key plays down the stretch on Rudy Gobert. And like, you see like the emotion come out, like, man, like he.
Like finally, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah. It just seemed like a bit of relief. But like you said, yeah, he just needs to have more fun out there. You know what I mean? Because.
Yeah.
winning is fun, and that's what the Bulls are doing right now. They're a winning team, so I
Right.
just think even though he's not able to contribute at or he has been contributing at the level he's accustomed to,
Yep.
you still gotta have fun with it. And you still have to, you know, if you play too tight, it's gonna show. And if you, like I said, if you force the issue, it's gonna show. So
Right.
he just has
So
to get into a better flow of things.
so if you're the head coach of the Bulls right now, if you're Billy Donovan, what's kind of your messaging to the team right now? How are you approaching game strategy and just managing, people's feelings in general? I would imagine any players who are still on this team who haven't been affected by COVID or health and safety protocols might still be worrying about, like, am I going to be, right? While still trying to prepare and play and things of that nature. So I guess if you were the head coach, how would you address kind of managing that?
It's tough, man. I mean, look, it's a legitimate outbreak right now. There's a lot of people out. 9 players plus 2 announcers. That's Bill Winston and Stacey King.
Announcers, that's ridiculous.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's why it's just, what do you say? That's a good question.
Right.
If you're Billy Donovan, I mean, you obviously are going to preach the next man up mentality, but it's like, at this point, it's just kind of gotten ridiculous. And it's also ridiculous that you still have to play because you only need 8 to suit up. And they have 9, technically. So it's, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough situation. I think the guys who haven't been playing, they just have to take advantage of the opportunity. Obviously, with you had mentioned, we signed a couple guys, like obviously from the G League and then waiver wire.
Yep.
Chicago native Alfonso McKinney, he played last night. It's going to get a lot more minutes, and guys just have to take advantage of the opportunity. It's treat this like an April game or like the season's over type of thing, and you're just trying to not get your stats, but you have to showcase. And these guys are going to be the same people, fighting for minutes down the stretch, and close matchups are when we're going to really need them in the season. So just got to show and prove right now and do whatever they can to stay in games and stay competitive, really.
Yeah, I saw Vooch tweeted out kind of a joke, but like, at least we'll have herd immunity now.
Right.
But it made me think, like, are we sure? Because Zach, this is his second time getting COVID this year, right? They obviously bled into last season, but this is his second time.
It is, yeah, and
he's vaccinated, and from our understanding, right, there's boosters involved too. So it's just like, that's what, months ago?
Yeah, man, it wasn't that long ago. This was, I mean, what, May, I guess, that he got COVID, or April. No later than May, so it wasn't that long ago, really.
Right. So
it's spent like 7 months, 6-7 months.
Right. So in my opinion, it's like the playoffs are still, months away. I'm not feeling confident at this point that, like, we can safely say, because the outbreak is happening now, and I've kind of seen this on mine, it's like, well, at least we're getting this out of the way now. I don't know if you can say that yet.
I mean, you can't. I don't think anybody can confidently say that I don't even think the rest of the teams in the league, really, because, I mean, you obviously don't want to see this for any team, but like I said, all it takes is or like a couple people, spreading, or a couple players in protocol, and then you have yourself an outbreak, like how the Bulls are dealing with right now. So I don't know, man. It's gonna get tricky, especially with full capacity stadiums, obviously still in the mix. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I think I don't think anybody can confidently say that, if you are going through something like what the Bulls are going through right now, then you'll be straight throughout the rest of the season. I don't think anybody can say that and should say that, because it's just not proven, so we don't know.
Right. I think at best case is wishful thinking, right? Like that's what we would like to happen, but you just really don't know. And it's unfortunate because usually with, an average season, you're going, if healthy, X team can contend. So all Bulls fans were saying at the beginning of the season, based on how the preseason went, if we're healthy, we could make some noise in the playoffs, right? Some people even saying Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
But now we have to think about if healthy and with respect to COVID, right? Like how will this shape out? So it's like, finally, when the Bulls have a very competent contending team, we get two things working against us from the health standpoint.
I know, it's crazy, man. I I was thinking about
Yeah,
that the other day. Like, this would be the season where, like,
this would be the season. Yeah, that's ridiculous. So, question for you: with Kobe coming back, do you have any? I guess what are your expectations for how he can reintegrate himself? He was starting to turn a corner after that shoulder surgery. Wow. Um, and he's finding his way back into this team. He was trying to prioritize it looked like defense to try and fit in on that end and then just let his offense flow. He started to, he had that one game where I think he hit 4 threes and just made a huge impact offensively. Got set out with health and safety protocols. From that end, it kind of derailed that momentum. So I guess from your perspective, what are you looking for him to do in light of, right, the team is shorthanded, but also just I guess developing his rhythm and flow back into this team.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see him play a lot off ball, like kind of how Io was playing off ball, but Io plays a lot more like on the corners and the wing than like up top perimeter, like handling the ball, like spotting up for threes. He does, like I said, like more of the corner. I think for Kobe, he can just spot up from anywhere beyond the arc and just be like that secondary ball handler and playmaker, and just be extremely aggressive with the shot. They'll probably start him as soon as he gets back if he's able to, able to play and isn't like suffering setbacks in terms of that.
Right.
But whatever he does, you have to give him a pass. As with anyone coming back or that's going like slated to return in the next week or two, for at least the first few games. I mean, who knows even how it might affect them, or if not shorter or longer. But you have to always take that into consideration as well. But from a purely just production standpoint, I really want to see him, like I said, play off ball, get back to that high volume 3-point shooting, and trying to establish the role just like that spot up guy at first, and then graduate into take more responsibility, attempting to break people down and getting his own shot. Because I don't think they should. I think the point guard experiment for now just should be over completely. And even with guys out, there's still Lonzo and Caruso to handle the ball in that first unit. I think Kobe White can just come in, like I said, spot up and shoot. And even that second year, they've been playing Devon Dotson, but kind of off ball. Let's just play Dotson on ball, do a lot of just DHO up top, and then obviously set up that way and run through different players like Vooch. But I don't think Kobe should play on ball and like have to initiate offense during the stretch. He should, like I said, I think a perfect role, that 15 to 18 or even 10 to 15 points a game type of thing, like off the bench, like once everybody's healthy.
Yeah, and I imagine there would be some more pronounced 2-man game with him and Vooch, right? Seeing how there'd be 2 primary offensive players.
Yeah, I want to see him a lot with Lonzo as well. I want to see Lonzo and Vooch, Lonzo and Kobe, and then Kobe and Vooch, playing off one another. Because Kobe, I mean, he can hit Vooch off that pick and pop feed. It's just a matter of him managing that. And in the past, like he had to do that as the point guard and the scorer last year, but he shouldn't have to, even with the Bulls being shorthanded. They can still set him up from a situation where he doesn't have to be a primary ball handler. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see how that develops, and hopefully Vooch can get rhythm with Lonzo and Kobe and just other guards where like he can expect to, run a few plays where involved with either one and produce.
Yeah, you actually just reminded me of a point that I brought up, during I think it was Summer League with Io, and if you remember, I was like, that's interesting. He's like primarily playing off ball. And that's considering he had the ball in his hand all the time at Illinois. So in my opinion, we know he's capable of running a team as a point guard. And he may not be the purest point, historically speaking, but at the same time, it's like who is, in the sense where like even Steph Curry, he's an amazing point guard, but like the game has just shifted where it's like you don't need to be a John Stockton type anymore to be considered a pure point. Like we've transitioned from that. So, but what it kind of seems is like people who have traditionally been in that position, no matter what their level. So even take a Dotson, for example, it's like Dotson can run the show as a point guard. Even Kobe has done it as well. Now, how effective they've been right, is a different question. But there does seem to be an intent from the coaching standpoint to only have specific people play on ball versus other players who have traditionally had on ball duties. They're strictly playing off ball. Have you noticed any of that with Billy Donovan? Like,
oh, definitely.
It just makes me wonder. Like, even take someone like Io. Like, I would have liked to see him, even at this point. Let's say take out the COVID outbreak that's happened, have more responsibilities on ball, just in spots. I'm not saying the whole game, but just sometimes.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I think with Bill Donovan, you kind of notice how there's a couple different attackers in the offense, and it's really Zach and DeMar primarily. Lonzo runs some Lonzo runs some pick and roll, but like it's
right.
Not that
exactly.
It's not that often that you see that, especially when everybody is readily available and whatnot. But you see that a lot with Io, and that's why I was kind of surprised to see him playing a lot more off ball like he is this year. Because I thought if he were to get minutes, like he'd have to come in and be a real ball handler, play initiator, role as well. But I think some of that has to do with personnel off the bench. The Bulls' backup bigs, like Tony Bradley, he's capable in the role, but same as with Alizé. But you're not running plays for that to happen consistently. So, and with DeMar DeRozan playing off the bench as well, and him being the play initiator, that takes the ball out of whoever hands it would be in otherwise as well. So I think it's interesting because Lonzo will definitely lead like the break and bring the ball up. Same with Io, he'll push the ball in transition, but in terms of having that opportunity to make plays in the half court consistently, you don't really see that as much with who would you say like the secondary or third ball handlers on a Billy Donovan team. Like he'll take the ball out of their hands and then run the offense in different ways.
Right. But yeah, just even I would like to see more of Io in those spots where there's a chance for a break. It almost seems like, from an understanding of how Billy Donovan wants the offense to run, you'll see Io just take off. And it's like, it'd be nice if he could get the ball and take off, because we see how fast he is, and he's been pretty solid finishing as well. He may get into like tunnel vision sometimes in terms of like he'll just try and attack and maybe not hit the open man in some occasions. But I think that's okay if you pick the right spots to allow him to do that. But it just doesn't necessarily seem to be in the game plan.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's going to come with just time for him. It's actually great that it's working out this way, if you're being honest, because if he did kind of come in, like I said, as the traditional guard off the bench, and say he plays kind of a mistake-free brand of basketball right now, but say he did make some early mistakes as a point guard, like he would definitely. It might take a little longer for Billy Donovan to earn his trust. Whereas now, you see him making plays like off the dribble as a passer, even though it's not set up like a pick and roll where he's making the decision himself. It's more like an instinctive pass based on reacting to what the defense is doing at the time. So I think it's good for him to see the game and be able to attack in different ways, because he's not going to lose what he already has in the pick and roll. He can only get better with that too. And seeing other guys do it as well, like with DeMar and how Zach navigates it, and Lonzo as well. So I think it's going to be just really beneficial down the line with him being able to do all these other things off ball and then fulfill every role player tendency, but still maintain those point guard skills. Like once he's in position to play a lot more minutes as a primary ball handler.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So upcoming, the Bulls have the Pistons on Tuesday, and I think the Raptors on Thursday. And it's one of those things where I guess you can really just, like we were saying earlier, kind of manage, low expectations and just trying to get through these games and get back healthy.
Right.
But how do you see this shaping up for the Bulls in terms of their Eastern Conference standing and just momentum for the rest of the season when they finally can get back healthy?
We could potentially slide a little bit, especially this week. To me, I think these are still games we have a chance to win. The Toronto game is going to be tougher.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Lakers on Sunday. But this Pistons game, I'm looking at as a chance to win. I think Jeremy Grant's out. We're playing, I believe we're at home, right? Let's see.
Which game?
The Pistons game? Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
home
Pistons
game.
is at home. Yep.
I don't know. I just see us being competitive in that game because I think that's still a game that Vooch, on paper, should get off. Like, we've had these discussions before, but on paper, he should be able to set the tone. And to me, if, this is, we're going to call it vintage already, but if he just throws it back to Orlando last year and has a big potential, 25, 30-point game, I think we'll be able to get enough contributions to keep the game at least close. And if we're playing well defensively, we still have a lot of good defensive players available, and limit, Pistons shooting from downtown. They're not a great shooting team anyway. But if we're able to limit big nights from some of the role players like a Sadiq Bey or Frank Jackson, those types of guys, I think we'll be able to have a chance to come off the victory. I'm not going to predict the win, but I think we have a chance to.
Yeah, so one thing I'm kind of thinking about with this current team and what's needed of the people who are available is Caruso just came back against this game on Saturday against Miami. And one thing I worried about early in the season was like how many more minutes he was playing versus in LA. Like, we know what he's capable of just from a hustle and energy standpoint, but he's playing way more minutes at this point. And it's just like, how does that carry over throughout an entire season, right? Like, because I feel like his role has always been perfect because he can just come in spurts, cause a little havoc, and then he's out for the rest of that game. But with the Bulls, we rely on him to do a lot. And so with this hamstring injury, he just came back from that, and he didn't look that great. Like, he was fine, but you can tell he's still working his way back from an injury. So what's your level of concern for the rest of the season and even the playoffs? And I think we had this conversation in a more broad terms earlier, but just like when your team is playing small ball of this kind of caliber for a long stretch of time with no, potential for changing that style to more of a big man and bigger player type of style, will they wear down quicker? So by the time you may have a great season, but then in the playoffs, they don't have enough to take it to that next level in the playoffs. Like, do you have any level of concern there, or do you think it'll kind of work out by the end of the season?
I'm optimistic, but I'm concerned about both. I think as far as Caruso's hamstrings are tricky, and I think you hear like they can play on whatever, they're not going to re-aggravate the injury. It's not the case for hamstrings. You can make that a lot worse, pretty quickly too. Just the wear and tear on it, and he's literally playing because he's obviously super tough, but because the Bulls have no choice but to play him as well. Like, he has to basically play for them to be able to play these games now, and he's going to have that warrior mentality regardless. But they do have to, be cautious with him once other guys are able to get back from our protocols, because they have to be able to limit that injury and not have that be a lingering thing throughout the rest of the season. And as far as the size, that's why I do think there's going to be a trade coming at some point, just because we still haven't played the Bucks this year, right? We might have played them preseason. Is that?
Yeah, I don't think a regular season matchup has happened. Let me check real quick. Nope, no Milwaukee yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I just think at the end of the day, certain matchups just become impossible in a series, and to maximize what you want to do, and the shelf life for a good NBA team is not that long anyway. So I think with the Bulls in position potentially at the end of the year as contenders, they have to look right now how they can upgrade and probably just close the gap to certain matchups. You're never going to be able to match up with Giannis. There's nobody in the league, in my opinion, that can even slow him down. I don't think there's a good person who's, a good defensive counterpart, if you will.
Right.
But I think the Bulls should go after somebody like that, where like either they're a straight defender or somebody at the power forward position who's able to, I don't know, at least give Giannis some trouble. And there's not that many out there. There's like Jared Vanderbilt for the Timberwolves, but he just signed an extension. But a player of that caliber, or at least like of that makeup, would make sense. But We'll see. We'll see how like that size plays out. But as far as Caruso with the Bulls playing big, those lineups, I think it's working now. But yeah, like you said, you do run the risk of wear and tear just throughout the rest of the season.
Right. I mean, a name, since you brought up Trey, is a name that I've consistently heard before the season, during the season, and, even now, is Kobe White, right? His name always kind of comes up as maybe he's an expendable piece with this iteration of the team. How do you feel on that? Because, I mean, strictly from a value standpoint or a talent standpoint, if we include somebody in a deal, he'd probably be the best name, at least of who the Bulls would consider.
Right.
But at this point, how do you feel about potentially parting with Kobe if it comes to that, or keeping him and riding that out? And if there's potential you see in how he can fit and play better than he has thus far.
I think we're loaded at guard, so it might not be a huge hit on paper. But for me, selfishly, I definitely want to see him be able to contribute and, just like I said, be that spark plug off the bench and at least ride it out for the rest of the season. But it's still a gamble, like you said. It's probably the best trade chip, if you will, outside like a Patrick Williams, which they won't and shouldn't do or include in the trade. But it's not often you really see like that big for little swap. And not only that, if we're specifically looking for a power forward, teams need they know this, so they're gonna lowball the Bulls and maybe not make players available that we're actually looking for. So I think it would be tough to pull out a trade with just Kobe White as the centerpiece, looking for like an impact forward at least. So we'll see. I don't think it's a outside the realm of possibility, but I do want to see him first the the team. Honestly, I think he does have a lot of value left on the team, and I think he can just really contribute. Like I said, just being that consistent offensive source once everybody is ready to play.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I have a real fear for the rest of Kobe's career, it's basically going to be, at some point, he's going to be on a different team. I don't see him being a Bulls lifer for whatever the reason may be. I'm not speculating on that. But at some point, he's going to be on a different team. And I feel like from that segment of his career and later, it's going to surpass what he's going to do on this Bulls team. And as you and I both know, that is the story of a Bulls fan's life, right? Where a player leaves and becomes a better player than they were on the Bulls. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that can happen on this team, but I feel like that might be where this one is headed.
Man, there's a million examples. How many should we go through? Obviously, Tyson Chandler when he went to the Hornets. Elton Brand became an all-star at the Clippers. Man.
Right.
Shit, Ron Artest, NBA champion.
Ron Artest, yep.
There's so many. So many. Even like you see guys thriving in different situations. Like, we see Markkanen this year. Daniel Gafford was playing great last year.
Right.
Wendell Carter is a starter playing pretty decent on the Magic.
Yeah,
it's, man, a tale as old as time. Somebody leaves the Bulls, especially if you're like a role player, somebody who maybe an up-and-comer, and then they just end up playing great somewhere else.
Yep, no. So rotations for the rest of the week, how do you see that shaping out? Looks like actively, who do we have right now? We have Lonzo, Caruso's back, Dotson's still good, Alizé, Cook.
Tyler Cook, yeah.
Yeah, Tyler Cook, Vucevic, Bradley. Marco, has he seen any meaningful minutes at this point?
No.
Right, that's what I thought, just making sure.
Yeah,
and Marco. Yeah,
it's funny because I think Bill Donovan said like maybe a week or two ago that he's just not ready this year.
Ooh, goodness.
Yeah, I don't know if he said that explicitly, but
that's
like
between the lines. That's what he said.
I think there might have been a quote. I'm not exactly sure, but he did say he's not ready this year, and he's kind of treating him like that. And,
well, it definitely has looked that way, right? If he hasn't sniffed that court, so yeah, clearly that's how they feel.
Even with all these guys out, yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Right. So yeah, I mean, based on those available players, it seems like for one point of the season, which is strange, but we're more front court heavy now than
I know.
than guard heavy.
Let's see what lineup I would do. I assuming Kobe White's back, I would go Lonzo, Kobe White, Caruso. Let's go with, let's go Alfonso McKinney and then Vooch. And the only reason why I say Alfonso McKinney is you still need those two backup forward spots. And I think Alize Johnson's going to play the backup four, and then you can go with Bradley off the bench in that same role. It's funny, yeah. Bradley's role's been unchanged throughout this entire process.
He's had the only static role. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I think those should be the five guys throughout there, and then we'll probably see Tyler Cook, a two-way player, solid big. He might get some minutes. Dotson's been playing a lot more. He'll be the backup and probably play heavy minutes, honestly.
Yeah. Don't forget about Javonte, too, because Javonte's coming back this week.
Yeah, once he comes back, he'll just be that starter instead of, I guess, either Alize Johnson or McKinney if they start either one of those guys. So
Right. Demolition Man.
How do you feel about that nickname? I think we talked about this before. How do you feel about that that nickname? I feel like got to be called Simon Finn's got the blonde hair, though. He doesn't have blonde hair Wesley did,
Well, how I feel about it is, in general, I miss Stacey King calling the games because I'm not hearing the names,
right?
And the typical outburst that you would normally hear for certain plays. So you just reminded me that I just miss him calling games at this
Seriously,
point.
Yeah, get
it's a different feel.
All the players, yeah, get well soon as well. And of course,
sure.
Stacey King and Bill Wennington as well. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully Adam Amin doesn't get affected by this. He's
I
been
know.
sitting with both commentators who have been out with protocols. So,
right.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have a different five, or what's your rotation like? Any one player you actually are looking for a breakout this week, or outside like a Vooch, who's one role player you're like, okay, this guy's gonna get off this week?
I feel like we might be overdue for a Dotson game in some form or fashion. Like, I feel like he's gonna have a good, like at least 15 points or more type of outburst. Because he always just seems ready to like do more, but he's just, he doesn't seem like an explosive player in the sense where he's gonna try and just get his by any means necessary. Like, he seems to be very much a team guy. But yeah, I'm actually expecting a good break, or a good game, I should say, from Dotson on that end.
Oh man, I would love to see that. I think Dotson has a chance to be at least a good backup point guard in the league. And yeah, like you said, I think he's just kind of been playing not cautious, but he definitely wants to not lose his minutes, even though he's getting these minutes by virtue of guys being out. I think he still wants to take advantage and not waste them, basically. So that's a good pick.
Yeah, what about you?
I think Alfonso McKinney, Chicago guy. I think he's gonna have a big he's gonna have a big game. I don't know if it's gonna be like an 18, 20 point night. He's also like a really good rebounder too. He could have like a 8 rebound sort of night or some shit like that, but we'll see.
Yep.
I'm not sure. I think that's gonna be a guy who's gonna just end up playing a lot of minutes at both forward spots because of all the guys that are out. So
yeah.
Him, and then I think hopefully Caruso. He hasn't had a huge scoring night yet. Maybe he'll approach 16 or 20. I think that'd be I think that's realistic.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like as a Bulls fan, this is the time of the season where you're just like, hey, man, I'll take a big game from anybody that's
Right.
random. Like, bring it on, right? Like, even if there's some irrational confidence type shots here and there within the mix, that's okay. This is the time to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, one last thing to Lonzo. Man, this is the Lonzo week, in my opinion. I think Lonzo can definitely have some huge nights. It's a fun matchup with him and Cade on Tuesday, and then obviously with Fred VanVleet being able to guard him on Thursday.
Yeah,
I think he has a chance to have a really just good and complete week. He's a complete player anyway, and puts up a lot of stats in every area. He's good contributions in each category, but I think he's going to have a huge scoring week, but also just play that steady role, like that steady point guard role, steady playmaking.
Yeah, no, I think this is one of the situations for his entire career where he's never been primed better to kind of display publicly for national media, like how much he's advanced and gotten better. Throughout the season, there's been a lot of talk about, you'd like to see Lonzo do a little bit more, get more involved in the offense. Like this is definitely the time. And he has stepped up his 3-point shooting, his aggressiveness, that sort of deal. But yeah, you're right. This week would allow him to take an even bigger leap from that standpoint. So it'll be exciting to see for sure. At the very least, I think the main takeaway storyline for Bulls fans to watch this upcoming week is just like, how does Lonzo and Vooch, how do they step up in this situation? Like that'll probably be the overarching interesting thing. But then, like we were saying before, any sort of breakout games from a guy such as a McKinney or a Dotson would be a nice change too. I'll say for me personally, that's with this stretch of games, with being surrounded by this COVID outbreak, it's nice to just kind of get a chance to look at, okay, who's going to do something besides a Zach or DeRozan. Right, because they're out, right? Just so you kind of know what you have for later in the year.
Exactly, yeah. It's definitely could be an indicator of, okay, this guy in a different situation, I can at least rely on him, you know what I mean? Or because he played well while guys were out, I can rely on him down the stretch of close game or close matchups later on.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, interesting week, as we said, coming up. The Bulls are definitely shorthanded. But they will have to power through and make it through this next stretch of the season.
Yep.
Any last comments or any last things you're looking forward to?
No, I think we just gotta stay afloat. Obviously, like I said, Lonzo and Vooch, those are gonna be the two main guys this week. But I do want to see which players step up besides them, because where's an NBA team? We got to get to at least 90, 95, 100 points. So
Some points going to come from somewhere.
Exactly. And who's going to be able to make stops and plays on the other end if we do end up in tight games? So I'm just excited to see which role players are able to step up, and then excited for players to come back too. Because, as soon as we get a healthy team, I think we're going to start I wouldn't say dominating again, but you know how the season's been going so far. It's been just pretty complete on both ends, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Another edition from the Bulls from the Go podcast. You were just checking in with this seemingly COVID edition of the state of the team, but hopefully we'll have some better news coming up in the next week or two in terms of the vitality of the rest of the squad and our roster, and hopefully for this playoff push that should be in the mix.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting stretch. We'll see what happens, but as always, check us out at bullsfromthego.com. We've got some cool stuff coming. Got some highlights coming of Ayo Dosunmu and DeMar DeRozan. Probably a couple other Bulls players, but we'll see. Besides from that, follow us on Twitter at bullsfromthego. Be sure to check us out for more episodes, and we'll be back at you pretty soon.